Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today we will be discussing about New Zealand's Zero Carbon Act. So here we will discuss what is the current affair and what is this act all about. So what are the issues that this act deals with. We will also discuss about the key targets of the act, that means what are the commitments under the act. We will also see whether the country of New Zealand, whether it is equipped enough to meet the targets. So is this target or this set of targets suitable for the conditions of New Zealand? And finally, from our Indian perspective, we will be discussing about the lessons that India can learn from this targets. So this is what we will discuss today. A very important topic, especially for your UPSC Mains examination. This would be a very important topic. So we will be discussing this in this perspective. We will try to cover all the aspects important for your UPSC prelims as well as your mains examination and also for various other competitive examinations. So let us start. Let us start with the current affair. First, let us understand what was the current affair. So recently, the Parliament of New Zealand's Parliament passed a new act and this is called the Zero Carbon Act. So, the speciality of this act is that the Zero Carbon Act, from the name itself, you can make a guess. So, this act targets on a zero carbon emission. So, the aim is to commit New Zealand to become zero carbon emission by the year 2050 or even before that. So maximum by 2050, that is within 31 years, or rather it would be better to say 30 years because 2020 is soon approaching. So within next 30 years, the country aims to attain the status of zero carbon emitting country. So this is the target and that is why it is important. Now, why it is relevant? This is because the Parliament has passed this act. So, you know that when a Parliament in any country passes an act, that means the particular act gets a legal backing. It becomes legally binding. So, that is why it is important. And this is more important, more significant from your exam perspective because this is for the first time that a country is giving a legal backing to it. Even though many other countries, including India, has set up various ambitious targets, there is no legal backing to it. But here, the Parliament has passed the act, therefore it is legally binding. So that is why this is very important. So this is the current affair. Now also remember the target period. It is 2050. So let us move on. Let us understand the details of the act. Let us see what is this act all about. So this act, it comes as a part of the attempt of New Zealand to meet its Paris Climate Accord commitments. We know that under the Paris Climate Change Agreement, under the Paris Climate Accord, different countries have different commitments. So, to meet the commitments made by New Zealand under the Paris Climate Change Agreement or Paris Climate Accord, it has adopted this act. Now, second thing to be understood here is that this act, this is not a separate legislation, but there has been an amendment made to an already existing legislation. So, there was already a legislation put in place. Now, certain amendments have been made to this already existing legislation. So, amendment was made to the Climate Change Responses Act of 2002. So, this Act of 2002, this is the existing legislation and now amendments have been made to this existing legislation. Now, this act has been titled as Climate Change Response Zero Carbon Amendment Act. So remember the names of the previous act as well as the present act. So previous act was known as Amendment to the Climate Change Responses Act of 2002. Now the new name is Climate Change Response Zero Carbon Amendment Act. Now next thing to be remembered here, it provides a framework by which New Zealand will be able to develop and implement climate change policies that are in line with the Paris Agreement. Now, in the beginning itself, we have seen that this act has been brought to force in order to meet the commitments made by New Zealand in the Paris Climate Accord. Now, the act provides a framework within which New Zealand will be able to develop certain policies and implement certain policies which will help this country to attain its target, its aim or its commitments under the Paris Agreement. So it is in line with the Paris Agreement. Now, next thing is that the objective of this act is to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this is the commitment or the objective regarding the temperature limit. Now, again, a very important feature of this act, according to the government of New Zealand, this is the first legislation in the world, not in the country but in the world. That is why this is very relevant. Even in your preliminary examination, not only in UPSC but also in other examinations, other competitive examinations, questions can be asked since this is the first time in the world. So, this is the first legislation in the world to make a legally binding commitment. So, this commitment is legally binding. That means it has the backing up of a law. So, this is legally binding commitment to living within 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. So, that is why this is very relevant, very significant legislation. So, this is briefly all about the act. So, this is in brief. Now let us come to the key targets of this act. So first one, it presents the country's plan on how to act over the next 30 years. This is because the target has to be achieved by 2050. So they have got a time gap of 30 years. So this bill or this act presents the plan of the country on what all methodologies and what all should be adopted in order to achieve this target. So this is a comprehensive plan for the next 30 years. Now, it also aims at sustainable development to safeguard its future and also the future of the children, the next generation. So, they have come up with a comprehensive planning, comprehensive policy and methodologies that should be adopted in the next 30 years to achieve this target. Now, let us come to the key targets of this act. First one, the first key target is to reduce the greenhouse gases. So, greenhouse gases means those gases which contribute towards global warming. Those gases that contributes to the greenhouse effect by absorbing the infrared radiation. Now, examples are carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbons, etc. Now, they have set a target to reduce all the greenhouse gases except methane to net zero by 2050. So, all the greenhouse gases would become net zero. Net zero means zero emission by 2050, but exemption has been given to methane or CH4. The chemical formula is CH4. So, methane. Now, second target, reducing the emission of biogenic methane. So, biogenic, it is biogenic. I'm sorry for the spelling error. So, it's biogenic. Now, the reduction in the emission of biogenic methane up to 10% below 2017 levels by the year 2030 and up to 24 to 47% below 2017 levels by 2050. So this is the target, and here we will see that the target is phased. That means not all on a sudden this will be achieved, but in a phased manner. Now, what is meant by biogenic methane? Biogenic methane means it is produced from biological sources. For example, cow dung or the waste generated by the livestock. So all these are biogenic methane. Even wetlands can be considered as biogenic methane because here the methane is produced from biological sources. So this is the target regarding reduction in the emission of methane. Now, the third target is to establish an independent climate change commission. So a specialized body, a commission called Climate Change Commission would be created, and this will be an independent body. So this is the third target. Now, fourth one is to establish a system of emissions budget. Now, what is meant by emissions budget? Emissions budget means that a system where the total emissions and any change in the emissions, that is a reduction or increase in the emissions, will be rightly calculated and will be presented. So, a system of emissions budget will be developed. So, this is the fourth target. Now, fifth target is to separate targets for biogenic methane, which we have already discussed. So, separate targets will be set up for biogenic methane. Why? This is because methane is a short-lived climate pollutant with an atmospheric lifetime of around 12 years. But even though the lifetime of methane in the atmosphere is much shorter than carbon dioxide, it is more efficient or effective or efficient in trapping radiation. So that is why. And as I said, biogenic methane, it is generated by biological sources or natural sources, and this includes livestock emissions, waste treatment, wetlands, all these are included under biogenic methane. So conclusion here is that greenhouse gas, this methane as a greenhouse gas, this is more potent to cause climate pollution compared to CO2. That is why there is separate targets for biogenic methane. So this is the key targets. Now let us see how suitable is this law to New Zealand. So whether New Zealand will be able to achieve this, what is the present status of the country, that we need to understand. Only then we will be able to say whether they will be able to achieve this target or not. So general conclusion is that this country is well positioned in order to undertake these steps to mitigate the climate change. This is because they are on the right track. They will definitely be able to achieve this target. Now, when we say they are well positioned, we need to understand and justify why they are well positioned. So let us come to the reasons. First one, the capacity of the country to generate electricity from renewable resources, it is 80%. So 80% of the electricity can be generated from renewable resources. It can be solar energy, it can be wind energy, tidal energy. So this country is capable of generating 80% of their total electricity demand from renewable resources. So this is the first thing. Now second one, it is already working on phasing out the offshore oil and gas. So this is second step. Third one, the government is also working towards investing $14.5 billion to better its public transport system. So we know that by promoting the public transport system, the use of private transportation will come down. So when the use of private transportation comes down, this will definitely bring down the emission levels. So one step towards reducing the pollution levels is to promote the public transport, and the government is already spending so much on it. So this is also a right step. Now next one, steps are also being taken or made in order to promote walking and cycling infrastructure. So this is very, very important. This is important from two perspectives. First one is on the health of the individuals, on the lifestyle of the individuals. Second one, it is on the climate change impact or the ecological impact. So for the ecology or for the environment as well as for the personal health of an individual, this is very important. To promote a healthy society and a cleaner society, this would be very good step. So this is yet another step taken by the government here. So this is also appreciable, and this steps means that the country is on the right track to achieve this target. Now another reason is that the government of New Zealand also anticipates that the GDP and the household income, that is the income of the households in New Zealand, will continue to rise. Now why this is important? This is important because when the income levels increases, so the result is that the cost of adapting to climate change of the citizens will also be minimized. So this will minimize the cost of adapting to climate change for the citizens. So all these reasons put together, this makes it very clear that the new act or the new law is suitable to the present status of New Zealand, and they will be able to very well achieve this target. Now when we take Indian perspective of this, how it is relevant for India. Even though we have made certain targets and policies, we do not have legal backing for them. So legally it is not mandatory or legal backing is missing. So this is one thing. Second one, India, which falls within the Tropic of Cancer and the equator, a part of India falls between it. So we have huge potential for generating the renewable resources, especially solar energy. So this solar energy can be rightly trapped to produce electricity, which will bring down the pollution levels. So this potential has to be harnessed, and the government is rightly moving into the ISA targets, in International Solar Alliance targets in this regard. Next one is about public transportation system. Especially when we talk about the pollution levels in Delhi, one major step that was proposed was regarding promotion of public transport system and enhancing last mile connectivity, which the government should definitely work on developing a comprehensive plan regarding this. Now, walking and cycling infrastructure, again very important from Indian perspective. This is because of climatic factors or ecological factors as well as the health issues in India. The changing lifestyle of Indians, the emerging middle class, urbanization, all this has led to very bad state of health in most of the citizens. So to address that as well, this will be a right step. So these are the lessons that India can learn from New Zealand, and we should also definitely go for such a legislation or a legal backing which will make things better, more clear, and also the achievement of the targets will become time bound. So you can find the PDF of this lecture on our website www.studyiq.com. You can follow my Facebook page for more video updates. You can write to me at joycey.studyiq@gmail.com for any of your queries and clarification. Thank you.